Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about 4 cons of being a full-time artist. Now, before I started doing this full-time several years ago, I sort of had a picture in my mind. I had being a full-time artist sort of glamorized. And I often thought to myself, oh, if I could do this full time, it would be the perfect job. Well, there is no such thing as a perfect job. If you love what you're doing, it doesn't really feel like a job very much, very often at all, because you love it so much. But I was surprised that there are cons to being a full-time artist. And no one really discussed these things that I could find either in articles or on YouTube. I haven't searched recently, so that could be different now, but I wish I had kind of known these things beforehand so that going into it and once I started experiencing some of these things, I don't think I would have felt nearly as alone. And if I had been better prepared, I might have been able to ward off a few of these cons. So without any further chit chat, let's get right into it. The very first con about being a full-time artist is it's very lonely. I spend most days by myself in my studio working. I don't interact with other people. When you are forced to leave your house and go to a job where you are with other people, whether it be an office or if you're in retail or whatever it is that you do, generally you don't work by yourself. But as an artist, you pretty much spend all of your working time alone, unless you're fortunate enough to be able to hire an assistant to work with you, which I don't know many people who do, especially the first few years, because it's a struggling job trying to get your feet off the ground. So yeah, it's lonely. And generally I find that if I get up in the morning and I am working on a painting, I many times don't get out of my pajamas. I grab a cup of tea and I head straight to the studio and I get immersed in my work, and before I know it, it could be 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I haven't showered. I haven't gotten out of my pajamas. Sometimes I have forgotten to eat breakfast or lunch. It can get lonely and very isolating. So I have to find a balance as far as going out of the house, forcing myself to get out of the house, scheduling time to see other people, to have lunch with friends, or to visit family, or just to go out grocery shopping just so that I can be around other people. Because for me, the less I go out, the less I want to go out. So, and it's not something that anyone is going to force you to do. This is something that you sort of have to have the insight about so that you can ward it off beforehand so you don't get too isolated, because it's okay to be alone a lot of the time, but it really won't work for you when it comes time for you to have to talk about your art to your customers. If you decide to do shows and you have to be around people, you have to be able to sharpen your communication skills. So that was a huge con that I learned that I really didn't expect. So that was the first thing. The second con to being a full-time artist is that there are health hazards that I was unaware of. When I started doing this full-time, I was working a lot. I work, excuse me, as much now as I did then, more so actually. But when I first started, I wasn't used to using my shoulder muscles, my arm muscles, my wrist, my hands. I wasn't used to sitting so much. You sit a lot, or you stand at an easel a lot when you are painting or drawing, or however it is that you're creating, hours upon hours. And so if you're not used to that type of thing, it can really mess you up. And that's exactly what happened to me. After the end of my second year of doing this full time, I was working 7 days a week. I was in my studio every day. I was working on a series, my Mother Earth series, of mixed media paintings, and they were very intricate. They required a lot of different types of paints and supplies, and I did collage on some of them. So I worked a lot on these, spent an entire year doing them, and I started noticing that my shoulder was aching. I'm just aching so much. I wasn't taking enough breaks. I wasn't icing my shoulder down after I worked for hours upon hours at a time, and after a while that takes its toll. So my point is, once you start working on your art full time, and I cannot stress this enough, it is extremely important that you take care of your body. I did not do this, and I ended up having to have shoulder surgery. It wasn't solely because I was working so much, but that was a huge factor. That's sort of what started my spiral downward. I had shoulder surgery, and it took well over 6 months for me to even feel like I was halfway normal after my shoulder surgery. And now my other shoulder is starting to bother me. So my doctor gave me a great piece of advice, and he said that if for any work that you do with your whatever body part you're using, if you're an athlete and you use your legs a lot, if you are a football player and you use your arm when you throw, or basketball player, whatever it is that you do that you use those muscles on a regular basis, you see these athletes on the sidelines and they're getting iced down whenever they're not in the game. They are iced down after their game. They get iced after they work out. You need to be doing the same thing to take care of your body as well. So if you are working extra hard on your shoulder, on your arm, on your wrist, whatever it is that is starting to bother you a little bit, you need to ice that down. You need to treat it like any other athlete would, and take care of your body. It's important to do that. I did not do this. And had I known then what I know now, I would have taken more breaks. I would have taken more time for yoga. I would have taken more time to do stretches, to walk about the house, to set my timer so that every half hour I would get up and stretch. I can't tell you how many artists I know who have chronic neck pain from looking down at their desk all the time. A chronic shoulder pain from constantly standing at an easel and holding their brush up in front of them like this. It takes its toll. So if you take nothing else away from this video, please just remember that you need to take care of your body. You need to take breaks, because if you don't do it now, there may come a time when you will not be able to work as much or as effectively as you do now without experiencing chronic pain also. So that's a huge one. The third con is that you're never really away from work. That was a big surprise for me, something that I really didn't anticipate. My studio is adjacent to my house, and so I'm never really away from work. I work where I live. So when I get orders that come in throughout the day, I usually will take that as a break from painting, and I will go and work on orders. If they come in at 10 o'clock at night, I usually go in and I work on orders. I'm never really away. When you work where you live, you're never away from your job, and that can get very difficult to deal with unless you have a plan set out where you schedule your time off. It's very important. I can't stress this enough as well. It's very important for you to take time for yourself. If you have to create a sign for yourself and hang it on your studio door when you leave, and you spin that sign around and say, I won't be back until 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, just to remind yourself not to go back into the studio. You have to set time away from yourself, because if you don't, you'll never really feel like you can relax. People who leave their homes to go to work, when they come home from work, that's their fortress of solitude. They come home, they don't have to be reminded of work, they don't see work-related things, they don't have to deal with work-related issues. It's not like that for artists, unless you are fortunate enough to have a studio that is away from your home or away from where you live. And again, that doesn't happen for a lot of us because it's very expensive to maintain a second space for a studio. So if you can do that, I would recommend that highly, because that way when you walk out of the studio, you can walk away from that part of your job and live a normal life. If not, you have to be diligent about closing that part off when you are done with work. Designate times off so that you don't constantly feel compelled to go back to it. And the fourth con about being a full-time artist is that you take on full responsibility for your business. You are the boss. When you work outside of the house and you work for someone else, if something goes wrong, you can blame the boss. But what if you are the boss? Then you have no one else to blame but yourself. So it's very easy to want to consistently and constantly push yourself to do more, to be more. And that's a good thing, don't get me wrong, but it can become very overwhelming and very stressful when you are the only one in charge and there's no one else to delegate to do the things that need to get done. There's no way that you will be able to do it all when you are working for yourself and you are the only employee there is. So it's important for you to designate things for you to do, but to have realistic expectations. If that means that you need to take Monday and Tuesday and do nothing but social media, paint Wednesday and Friday and do nothing else, Thursdays, designate that as your shipping days, or however you want to work your schedule in order to fit it all in. If you just go in and just start sort of, well, I'm just going to do whatever I feel like today, chances are you're not going to get things done that really need to be tended to. And everything needs to be tended to all the time, it feels like. When you're an artist, all you really want to do is sit and paint. And that is, unfortunately, that's only 50% of your job. I mean, at least mine, I have to spend the other 50% doing other things that I don't particularly want to do, but that have to be done in order for my business to remain successful. So, yes, you are the boss and you have to take on that responsibility, but you also have to give yourself some slack that you are only one person and that you can only do so much. So be easy on yourself. Anyway, those are the 4 things that I have learned being a full-time artist over the last going on 6 years now. And yeah, so I hope that with this video, you're able to take away some things that you will consider as you head into the world of fine art. And if you are a full-time artist, I would love to hear from you. Have you experienced any of these things? For those of you who are looking into doing art full-time, were you surprised by any of these things? Do you have any questions about anything? I'd love to start a dialogue below. As usual, you always have great comments to offer. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up so that I know I am providing you with the content you want to see. Consider subscribing, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye, everybody.